When is the right time to start drafting your legal agreements? Let's find out in this week's episode of the Conscious Counsel podcast. Hi there. Thank you so much for joining and tuning into the Conscious Counsel podcast. It's me, your host and lawyer, Cory Sterling. And as always, the promise that I make to you in recording this podcast is to provide helpful information and fun and interesting stories that will help you protect and grow your wellness business with both confidence and clarity. In this week's episode, I want to talk about when is the right time to start working on your agreements. And this is a really, really big one. And I have two pretty crazy stories that I'm excited to share with you that will answer the question. So first, to dive into the question and essentially what we're talking about, when is the right time for me to start? One of the most interesting questions that I've always asked when I'm speaking to a potential new client is I'll ask them the following question. I will say, is this a now thing? And when I say, is this a now thing, I mean, is this something that you need to start working on now? And what I realized is maybe this isn't the right question because maybe my clients who are health and wellness entrepreneurs, if they're a Pilates studio, a yoga studio, a retreat organizer, a health coach, if they're doing anything in the health and wellness space, it's entirely possible that they don't know the right time for them to start working on something. And this was a reflection I had after going through two experiences last week with clients in serious situations with serious repercussions. And so I was like, oh, well, I should probably share with people when the right time to work on something is and to start working on your agreements. Now, the answer to the question is it depends. And you knew I was going to say that because I'm a lawyer and lawyers always like to say it depends. But the answer is that the time to start working on your legal agreements is far before the time that you actually need them signed, right? So a lot of people think like, oh, I'm doing this thing. I need to, I'm going to do it on April 1. So on the last week of March, I'm going to start working on my agreements. That's not an effective strategy. And the reason why it's not effective because there are many, many benefits of having customized industry-specific legal agreements. And one of them is that it helps you understand what sort of relationship you want to have with the people you're working with, right? So whether you're a studio and you've got teachers and you're signing an employee agreement or contractor agreement, or let's say you're running an international retreat and you want to outline the expectations of what happens if we have to cancel this? What happens if there's a world event outside of our control that we couldn't have foreseen and we need to reschedule? What do we do in that situation? And so what I'm learning is the runway of the time that you need to prepare the documents is much, much further ahead from when you're actually going to use them because you need to yourself go through the process of understanding what are my expectations, what are my biggest vulnerabilities, what is my maximum exposure to liability, what do I want, what do I need, what happens if it's not working, all of those sorts of questions. And really, it's like having a blueprint for a house, right? You don't just start building a house. You don't just buy random materials and start building. You have a blueprint, you have a plan, you follow it, and slowly you build it. And then one day you live in that house and your contracts really, really are the exact same thing. So the answer is long before you're actually using the agreements and getting someone to sign it, you should be working with an industry specific lawyer to go through the process of understanding what are the important questions that I should be asking myself. This is also why I see clients fail when they use templates or ChatGPT because they're like, hey, draft me a contract for this thing. But they don't go through the actual process. And ChatGPT is not going to ask them, hey, well, 9 of the 10 last clients we've worked with have had this issue and you didn't mention anything about this. Is this something you want to address or how do you want to deal with that situation? And that's why the process that we have at Conscious Counsel, which is an award-winning process, is proven time over time to get results for our clients. So the two stories I'm going to share are both challenging, one much more so than the other. One of them has to do with a client who was supposed to run a retreat in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And so if you read the news, I'm not such a news guy myself, but sometimes I do catch wind of what's going on. There was some involvement with the cartel and the Mexican government, and then it's a very volatile, tumultuous, dangerous situation. And people coming from North America do not feel comfortable going to Puerto Vallarta. The awesome thing is, client sold out the retreat. 18 or 20 people, I forget the exact number, started selling this last year. Last year, they had people started to sign the retreat participant agreement. But in the retreat participant agreement, it didn't say anything about rescheduling, right? And so now we're confronted with a situation where it's like, okay, well, what happens in the event that we have to reschedule or the dates change? And this was a critical thing that I had gone through with my client. I'd raised the issue at the time, and they were like, no, 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 it's okay. I don't want to worry about it. We'll just, if people want to reschedule, we'll work with them on a case by case basis. Cool. That's all good. But what it shows me is that when you're running a retreat in 2026, you should really start working on your specific agreements at least a year before and at least a month before you start selling it to anyone, because when you run a retreat, you have a relationship with the event host. Usually you have to pay a deposit. Do you get a deposit back? Was it negotiated with the host whether or not you're allowed to get that deposit back in the event that there's security risk, a governmental travel advisory telling people not to go? In the end, my client did a great job and we worked together. This client signed up for a Conscious Counsel membership, and cool, unlimited time, as many conversations, as many text messages back and forth, looking into legal questions. What am I legally allowed to do? What am I not legally allowed to do? But the point for me is not the specifics of what those details were in a challenging situation where these things happen. So just so everyone knows, I come on, I tell these stories about things that happen in my law practice. All the stories I tell are real. And sometimes you think like, oh, well, that's not going to happen to me or this won't happen. But it's like, it can happen anywhere, as we see what's going on in the world right now. It can happen anywhere at any time. You have to cancel, flights get changed. Like as I'm writing this, Emirates Airlines, which is one of the biggest airlines in the world, is grounded. So if you organize something and people were going to Bali flying with Emirates, they would not be able to make it. They would have to reschedule. Things like this happen. And so what I'm trying to illustrate is 2 days before you start selling to people, you don't want to be like, hey, here's your retreat participant agreement, and oh, I haven't thought about all these important questions. Really, as you're building the process out and engaging in the business and building the business, that's when you want to ask the questions. You want to have conversations with the space host of whoever's hosting your retreat. You're making a big payment to them, usually to reserve the spot. Sometimes it's 100%, sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's 25, whatever it is. You just want to be prepared. And the reason why you start working on your legal agreements early is because you want to be prepared in the case that anything happens. You also want to work with industry-specific lawyers in the event that anything happens, because we have the experience of having gone through this with so many clients to understand the risks and how to protect you. The second story is simpler, basic, but also really, really important. I have a client who currently has a small business in health and wellness doing really, really well. They have 3 independent contractors. They want to have more control over the way the services are being provided. And so the call was, should I have an employee agreement or not? Awesome. This is a legal question. So I go through, okay, well, let's go through the control test. Let's look at your jurisdiction. Let's see how much control you want to have. Do you want to set the hours? Do you want to set the quality of work being done? Do you want to tell them when and where they have to work? All of those things. Cool. We figure it out legally. In my sleep, I can help with that question. Then as I was on with the client's like, oh, and actually, I remember I have an old friend who said that, if I'm hiring employees, that I should hire them. So I'm going to go hire that person today. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What you need to do is you need to think very, very clearly based on all of the contrast of the experience you just went through with these independent contractors. You need to know exactly what it is you're looking for. And you need to write it down and you need to start working on the employment agreement first. So say to that person, hey, I'm interested. Maybe let's have a chat and understand what your expectations are and what your goals are and see if there's alignment on that. But much more importantly, what I told my client was like, let's start working on the employment agreement now. With the questions that we're going to send you, you will get the clarity to know what sort of relationship you want to have. It's the process, it's the process, it's the process. And it was such a knee-jerk reaction from my client. It was like, oh, I'm going to go hire someone right now. And I was like, no, the first thing you do is you start thinking about the relationship you want to have. For us in our law firm, I've done this for 9 years. I've drafted thousands of documents for my clients. When it comes to an employee issue, I know what problems are going to come up. I know what you're going to have to think about. And the questions that I'm going to ask you as we're drafting your agreement are going to help guide that particular process. And so for me, it was like twice in a week where it's like, oh, it's not like, oh, I'm hiring someone, so now I want to draft an agreement. You draft an agreement, you get clarity on the role, and then you interview people to make sure that they're a fit. So, in summary, when is the right time to start working on legal agreements? It's well before you thought it was going to be, because really it's the process of asking the questions, of being asked the questions, spending time of thinking about what sort of relationship you have, what are the biggest risks to you, what are the biggest liabilities, what are the biggest issues you're going to come up with. Obviously, you don't think about law that much, and I get that. Luckily, we do think about law that much, and we have so much experience doing this that we help our clients and get results for them. But just in the story of needing to change the dates for a retreat or potentially cancel a retreat, something that wasn't contemplated or something that was raised and wasn't explored. Okay, cool. But before the deposit was paid to the venue, this is something that should have been contemplated. Before a penny was accepted from any client, this is something that should have been contemplated. And even on a hiring decision. Awesome. The question of independent contractor employee is fairly straightforward, usually. But the real question is, what process can you go through to understand what you want from this relationship and legally what your risks are and where you want to protect yourself and what relationship you want to have? So I hope that you found this information helpful. If you are curious about working with Conscious Counsel or want any information from us, just find us on Instagram at Conscious Counsel. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and whatever it is you do, make sure you work with a lawyer who loves you.